said that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow if we let them, and we help them in return. Well, I don't know if I believe that's true, but I know I'm who I am today because I knew you. Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? Because I knew you. I have been changed for good. It well may be that we will never meet again in this lifetime. So let me say before we part, so much of me is made of what I've learned from you, and you'll be with me like a handprint on my heart. And now whatever way our story ends, I know you have rewritten mine by being my friend, like a ship blown from its mooring by a wind off the sea, like a seed dropped by a skybird in a distant wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, I have been changed for good. And just to clear the air, I ask forgiveness for the things I've done you blame me for. But then I guess we know there's blame to share, and none of it seems to matter anymore. Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? I do believe that I was changed for the better, and because I knew you, because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good.
So I feel safe enough with everyone here that it's okay for me to be crying, trying to say stuff. So I'm really grateful you're all here because Paul has touched everyone's life in this space in all kinds of ways. And he was a very special and talented guy. And he died 3 days before our 24th anniversary. And it's been really hard. So I thought I would start with something that maybe is not quite as emotional. So fuck. I want to thank Rhonda, my good friend Rhonda, who is also very talented. Not only is she musically talented, but she's computer talented. And she has helped me deal with my computer. So Paul put this thing called LastPass on our computer. So I had a password for LastPass, but I didn't know how to get to LastPass. And so Rhonda, in all of her skillfulness, got me into LastPass and has been really helping me to get organized electronically, which is, as some of you may know, my strongest, not my strongest suit. But between Rhonda and Ruth, Ruth, where are you? And Ruth, they have put together a team for me to call day or night when my computer messes with me. So I really want to thank you, and thank you. And Karen, where's Karen? Oh, so Karen is Rhonda's wife, and Karen has been my best friend for years now. And over the 3 weeks, it seemed longer and it seemed shorter, but over the 3 weeks that Paul was completely bedbound, Karen was here just about, I think, every night to help me get him ready for bed, to help me change him. And I could not have done it by myself, and Karen selflessly was here. And she's a little controlling. So she was pretty directive in how to do things, and I was very receptive. Fortunately, I was very grateful for her controllingness. So, thank you very much. And over here in front of the window are Alma and Alexia. And Alma was an incredible gift. Where's Brian? Brian? Alma was an incredible gift from Brian's wife, Elvira. So when I asked Elvira, I said, I hope this doesn't come across as racist, but do you know anybody who could help clean our house? And Elvira said, let me check. And Rosie knew Alma and referred Alma. And Alma has been a lifesaver. And throughout the time that I was taking care of Paul, Alma was here every week to help take care of me in my house. And it was unbelievable. I'm so grateful. And Alexia, her daughter, was here every day helping to take care of Paul and me. And I was so grateful for Alexia because not only did she really seem to know what she was doing, although she's indicated that wasn't necessarily the case, but she really seemed to know what she was doing. And between the two of us, I think we did a pretty good job of taking care of Paul in his last weeks. And so, again, I have tremendous gratitude. Let me go back to my paper. Robert. So Robert has been a good friend of Paul's for a long time and became even closer during the time that Paul was confined to bed and was here most days and held Paul's hand and talked to Paul and read to Paul and just was present and was present for me as well. And so Robert also was just an incredible help and helpmate. And I felt so supported every day. And without that support, I don't know what would have been impossible. So I'm grateful. Thank you. The people who are not here, Paul's sister, Sharon, and her husband, Joe, and his niece, Lisa, and her husband, Mike, they live, I'm not exactly sure where they live, something like Missouri or Kansas or somewhere in that, somewhere over there. And they decided to come out to see Paul, and they drove out, and they were here. His niece and her husband were here for, I think, 4 or 5 days, and his sister was here for a week. And they were here during the very best possible time to be here. And Paul was with it, and he was funny, and he was interactive, and he was so grateful that his family was here. And almost immediately after they left, he just plummeted. And I think part of that was because they left. And part of that was because, his sister is going to feel guilty because I said that, damn it. So it was not anybody's responsibility. It was just the course of the disease. And the tumor took over his frontal lobe, and he just plummeted. But I was so grateful for their presence, and they were so loving, and I really feel like I have a whole new family. And my family is well, I have a niece in Denver, Lexi, and I have twin nieces in Nashville, Andrea and Nina. And Andrea, is here. And she came to help support me. And she's a techie, which is really awesome. I need a lot of techies in my life. And so Andrea, not only has she been a wonderful support for me, and I'm so grateful, and I love her even more than I did before, but she's going to be working with Ralph, who's just sitting there with the camera. And so Ralph's documenting all of this, and Andrea is going to take what Ralph produces and turn it into, I think, a YouTube video that Paul's family can see, and that my family can see, and that anybody can see. And I'm so grateful that you have that skill and that ability, and that you're here. And everyone in this space has been so important to us, to me personally, but to us as a couple. Oh, Sam. So the kind of Asian-looking guy over there. At the risk of sounding racist. So that's Sam. And Sam is this really spiritual Buddhist guy, but he's also an awesome handyman. And Sam built that wall and that bench that you're all sitting on. He built this wall out here. He has helped with every improvement. The decks on the side, he has helped with every improvement we've done here over the past many years. And without Sam, we would have been lost. And even though Sam didn't necessarily want Paul to help him all the time, Paul refused to not help him. So Sam's also kind of Paul's was kind of a controlling guy too. So thank you, Sam. So here I wrote down a few things I want to say. I think. Let me see. I've done pretty good so far, right? Yeah. It's not bad. Okay. So let me read some of this. So even though Paul's death was 5 years in the making, for the majority of that time things were stable, and we were lulled into a pretty comfortable place in which it seemed he might be bucking the stats. However, the prognosis was 3 to 5 years, and he made it for 4.5. The last 6 weeks were a whirlwind. Paul took me to the hospital for my hernia surgery. I was there 3 days. He picked me up, took me home, took care of me for a week, and then that following Monday we went to see his neuro-oncologist, and she said, the scans are bad, and the tumor has migrated to your frontal lobe, and it's time to make a referral to hospice. So we walked out of Kaiser, and we made that referral to hospice, and they came the next day. It was Tuesday, and on Tuesday night he fell out of bed twice, and the paramedics had to come and pick him up. And the next day he was bedbound and never got out of bed again, as much as he tried to get out of bed. And again, if it wasn't for Alexia and for Robert and for Karen, I don't know. It would have been impossible. It was probably a blessing He went so quickly, but the pace left me reeling, and I still am. He was mostly the man of my dreams and occasionally the man of my nightmares. I can't see anymore. But over time, we developed and utilized the phrase that was really, really helpful at this moment. I hate every single thing about you. That helped a lot over the years. My husband was a lovely, loving, giving, and supportive partner, and he was that to so many of you in this space. He was, I don't know if anybody read the obituary, but one of the things I had to include in the obituary, that of all the things he was, one of the things he was a truck driver. And he would take his truck and he would move people and he would drag things, and he was the guy that people called when they needed a truck. So everybody, so I have the truck. Hopefully nobody will call me. When he identified a need, whether or not it was identified by the individual, he would go full bore to take care of the issue. Invariably, he did masterful work. He might wear himself out, but he always came away feeling grateful for being the helpmate and support he was. He died 3 days before our 24th anniversary. I live in gratitude for the love we shared, for the beauty he brought into the world and into my life. He would want you all to, so this is a direction for everybody. So he would want you all to take a piece of his legacy. So if you would like, I invite you to pick out a piece of his sculpture and to take it as a remembrance of him and his gifts and just the beauty of who he was. Thanks for coming. And after Rhonda sings another song, so get ready to cry some more, it will be time for people to say a few words if you choose. Well, actually, before that, Robert is going to read a letter from Paul's sister that she wanted people to hear. Okay. That wasn't so bad. Okay.
Memories like the corners of my mind, misty watercolored memories of the way we were, scattered pictures of the smiles we left behind, smiles we gave to one another, of the way we were. Can it be that it was oh so simple then? Oh, has time rewritten every line? If we had the chance to do it all again, tell me, would we? Could we? Memories may be beautiful, and yet what's too painful to remember, we simply choose to forget. So it's the laughter we will remember, whenever we remember the way we were, the way we
This is a letter from Sharon, Paul's sister. As I'm writing this, my heart is filled with much sadness as my little brother is gone. He was a very caring, kind, loving, and talented man. As a young guy, he was forced to live a life not being his true self because being gay was not socially acceptable. He left Illinois and moved to Sunnyvale, California, and then Palm Springs, and finally to San Diego. He met Mark, and together they built a wonderful life. My brother was able to finally do his art that he loved, and thanks to Mark, Paul and I reconnected again. We lost many years, and I regret that so much. I miss talking to him. I miss his smart-ass sense of humor. I miss so many things, but have so many memories that make me smile. Goodbye, my brother. I will miss you always. I love you, and glad for the time we got together. Thanks to Lisa and Mike. We will all miss you forever. Love, Sharon and Joe.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you all for being here. Now I can cry. It was, that first song that I sang, I had never heard it before. And Mark asked me to learn that. And I was so grateful to be introduced to that song. And I could really, feel the feelings of the meaning of that song for him and Paul. And, I have to say that I listened to it about 20 times a day over and over and over again because I'd never heard it. And I cried a lot while I was learning it, So I'm glad you all are here. And Paul was a wonderful, wonderful man. We have Paul Stoltes everywhere in our house, a variety of things, and it's great. We have sculptures, we have wall hangings, we have a mirror, we have all kinds of things, and it's wonderful. I mean, in fact, the placement of everything in our house, he came in and did that for us.
When they weren't home.
No, we were there, but yeah, he's a wonderful guy. So what we're going to do is ask anybody who wants to come up and share a little bit about your memories of Paul. And what I'll do is I'll hand the microphone to you, and then you can go ahead and share, and then you give it back to me, and we'll have the next person come up. So who wants to be first?
I met Paul through my friend Mark, and what I remember the most is their first date when they came to Kathy and Wesley's wedding, and Paul was so patient with all of us ladies because Mark was the only one that would dance with us, and he was out on the dance floor for I don't know how long, but he kept us all very busy and very happy. And Paul just smiled and stood there. And I will forever be grateful for Paul's sense of whimsy, because some of the pieces I have, I cherish. And the last piece I received was in, January or February at the art show. And it's this lovely green duck. Who would make a green duck? But Paul. And he's big, and he's got a very long neck, almost like a swan. But he's got a smile on his bill and glittery green eyes. Just perfect. And he greets me every morning. And I'm just very sad for my friend Mark, but know how many years of happiness that you shared. And so thank you.
Thank you very much.
One of the things that I loved about Paul was whenever I was around him, he would always sneak up next to me and he would say some terribly funny, inappropriate thing. And I would be the only person that heard it. So I'd be standing there laughing like an idiot, and everybody would be looking at me and saying, like, what? But he would just lean over. I don't know why he thought I would be the perfect audience. but he just always seemed to do that whenever we were together. And the other thing, I always thought that he was so generous. We came to an art show here once, and there was a man laying on his side, and I said, "Oh, is that for sale? I'd really like it." And he said, "No, it's not one of the pieces that for sale, but if you want to take it." And I was always amazed at his kindness, and I will always remember him very, very fondly.
So I met Paul through Mark, of course, and similar to you, his presence in my house is undeniable. So, so I like to tell this funny story. So my house had burned down in the fires, which is not funny, but anyway, Mark and so I came into work one day and it's Mark, you're not going to believe what happened. Somebody came by the house, and there were very few things that were intact that were remaining. Somebody came by the house and took this table and chair that I had in the garage. And Mark starts looking at me very sheepishly, and he goes, "That was us." So he and Paul had taken it, Paul had redone it. Paul made this incredible mirror from some of the remnants from the house that tells the story of the fire and the rebuilding. He, like you, Rhonda, he helped pick out the flooring. Everything that's hung on the walls was done by Paul. You know, he made some setups for some of the things. You know, I had bought things and he said, "Oh no, it should go there." I'm like, "Okay." And so he did an incredible job, and for that I'll be ever grateful. And his sharp wit and his sarcastic sense of humor is something I certainly could relate to. And I really appreciated that, and I loved to watch the relationship between Mark and Paul, most of all. I loved to see how the two of them had worked so hard to have the kind of relationship they had, and they both they earned it, they deserved it. That was just music to my ears to experience that and be a part of it. So I will miss him.
So we used to live in the house right next door, and I would come over almost like once every weekend, sometimes on school nights, and whenever we had plans to come over, Mark and Paul would hide little rocks like this around, and we would go on little rock hunts, and we would add them to our rock collections, and it was really fun, and I really miss him. He was a really good person.
Okay, I have 3 things I want to say about Paul. My name is Jeff. I knew Paul for 25 years. That meant for 25 years I was given advice, even that I didn't want. He particularly gave me advice about furniture. Yes, like everybody else here. So sometimes he and Mark would be out for a walk, and I live nearby. They would stop in, and Paul would start looking around at my furniture. He thinks I didn't see him, but I did. And somehow furniture started arriving at my doorstep. Some of it may be your furniture, but I have ended up with a beautifully furnished house. But here is a secret, a deep, dark secret that not even Mark may know. I became convinced that Paul owned Jerome's furniture. Yes. The reason he had a pickup truck was because he couldn't get a bigger truck in the garage. So when Paul wasn't giving me furniture, then he was giving me advice. And then occasionally we would have a difference of opinion. And I'm sure everyone else has had that experience too. But one thing that he shared with me that I'd like to share with all of you, when Paul first became sick and was getting radiation treatments and he was getting all kinds of other treatments, I told him on many occasions, Paul, I want to come over and drive you to the hospital. I want to help. Mark was working then when he could. Excuse me. Paul would always tell me no. He'd say, no, I don't need you. Yes, I didn't want to be told that I wasn't needed. But he said, Jeff, the reason that you're not needed is because I have an entire universe of women who, yes, he said, they have organized themselves. He said, they are taking care of me. They're taking me to the hospital. They're bringing me home. They're making sure that I have food that I can eat. Time and time again, Paul would say such wonderful things about the women in his life. And I wanted to share that with you in case somebody didn't actually hear that from Paul. It was such a gift of love. I thought, what could I do if I couldn't drive him, if Mark was here to make sure a lot of things were done here, if all the women were doing everything he needed, what was possible for me to do? So I said to myself, Jeff, what you need to give Paul is a teddy bear. So I thought I would give him a teddy bear. I even bought one. But then Paul got well. He did not want a teddy bear. He did not need a teddy bear. He became totally back in control of his life. And I love him and I miss him. I know all of us do. So thank you very much. And Jerome's Furniture would like to see you.
Hi, my name is Karen. I'm Mark's second wife and Paul's pain in the ass. I wrote a couple different things. I wrote something to Paul before he was really sick, before he got confined to the bed, and because I wanted him to know that I cared about him and appreciated him. And sometimes that was hard to say to him or to think that he would be able to take it in. So I'll read that part second, but this was, I hope I put this in the obituary book. I'm grateful that Paul shared Mark with me, though it wasn't easy. I love that he and I could share similar frustrations, moods, and especially noise sensitivities. We hated that. Our comments were often sarcastic, and some people might call it, or we did, dry humor. We could laugh at our shortcomings as well as those of others, especially our spouses, but with love in our hearts. I believe we grew on each other over the 20-some years. Don't worry, Paul. I told you that I would look out for your husband. Yes, he does need it. May you be at peace. May your spirit will be forever in my heart. Okay, that was hard enough. But I would like to read what I wrote to him. Paul, sweet man, I'm sending you heartfelt love with appreciation and gratitude for you. I feel especially connected when our dry humor aligns. You know what happy face looks like on me, and that's something we share. Your talents have been shared with many. You have graciously given us help over the years, kindly sharing your artistic abilities, contributing to our home. Thank you so much. Sharing our husband is generous and loving. We have shared many celebrations together over time, which has given us, Rhonda, that loving feeling. I feel lucky that you are and have been in my life, our life, for all the years past and present. I wish I could give you more. We love you, Paul. Your spirit will forever be with me. The short one, the one with the face. Thanks.
I'm not speaking for myself. I'm Kay. But Kathy wanted me to speak for her. So we wrote this down. Paul and I had a special connection. He understood me and I understood him. He was a lovely man and I will miss him. This is from Kathy.
Listening to all the neighbors and friends, it reminds me that I never got to take a walk with Paul. Mark suggested that I should take walks with Paul because Paul needed some exercise. But the reality is, and this goes back into the last century, he could walk up and back the Texas Street Hill on the way to the gym. While I was driving up the Texas Street Hill and parking, and when I would run down to see if I could catch him, and downhill's easier than up. And I would see somebody else coming up the hill, and I'd say, "Did you see?" And he'd go, "Yeah, the guy in black? He's already passed you, lady. In the other direction, he's up the hill." And I never could catch him. But that's kind of what he did for me. And I don't know if anybody else knows this, but I continue to take little walks. And when we were living in 3 different places during the pandemic, I would take our dogs for walks. And I had this deal with Paul. I would text him which route I was on with the dogs. So if I tripped over the dogs got away, or I broke something, he would know which route I was on that day. So he could follow the route and find us. I don't know if he ever checked his text. It didn't matter. The point was, if I was gone for 3 days, he'd be out there. He knew all the routes. And he could find the dogs. And he would do things for our dogs that no one in their right mind would do. Like after a fence was built by one of the people we were renting from, he came by with 1x4s and nailed them up all along the base of the yard so that the dogs couldn't get out, because they would. And that's the kind of guy he was and has been for the 20 so years I've known him.
So Paul and I, both artists, and we've always been sort of friends, but we were helping Kate and Mikey move into their house, and we were having a blast organizing. And one of us, I don't remember which one it was, one of us said, "This is so much fun. I thought you didn't like me." And the other one said, "Yes, that's true. I thought you didn't like me either." And we had liked each other for years and had never, that part of our personality was so similar that we kind of backed off from that. So luckily we didn't continue to back off from it. So we had some very nice times. And I'm really, really grateful for that. And for the friendship with Paul and Mark.
Hi, I'm Judith, and I know Paul through Clay Associates. And when I look at his work, I just feel his elegance and his spirituality, and it just draws all of us in, I know. And we all have some of his pieces all over the place. But I just would see him working, and was able to focus. And I just was so grateful to have known. I didn't know him well. I met him at the Art Institute when he worked there, and when they changed owners or whatever, got rid of all the local artists, he was heartbroken to leave because he'd put so much into it. But then he moved into his art, and I knew when he was going through treatment because I wouldn't see his pieces around on the shelves. And I would ask Eric, one of the directors, is he going through treatment again? He said, yeah, he hasn't been working. And then we'd start seeing his pieces again. It was so happy to see him working. So I think that he has this Buddhist connection, for lack of another word, of something spiritual. And I think maybe he will be making clay or driving a truck again in his next life. He'll be doing what he did, and I'm just so grateful that I knew him just for a short while. And this is just a lovely ode to him. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Brian. I knew Paul mostly through Mark. I work with Mark, and the story that I like to tell is about Mark, actually, and the beginning of the relationship with Paul. But it's Paul and Mark, and that's what I know is the love between them. Because I met Paul after Mark, and Mark told me all about meeting Paul and his excitement at the beginning of the relationship. And that was special to see you happy and to hear about all the happiness that you guys had throughout the years and all the people that shared that happiness. If that's not a life, what is? So we never live long enough, but if it's the quality that we want, then that's, I think, the most important. And, the blessings that you had together. So God bless you both.
I haven't thought of anything specifically prepared or anything, but Paul and I kind of shared kind of a real one-on-one relationship. It seemed like he did with a lot of people here. It was very, very kid-like, His kid-like nature was something that I was so attracted to, being able to giggle about things and talk about things that I can't talk with most adults about, like flying saucers and UFOs and all these really weird things. But we both kind of shared that in common. And I met him through Clay Associates as well. And he wasn't in the class I was in, but when I would come to make up a day or something, I would see him there working on his pieces. And his pieces always, like she was saying earlier, they'd be on the shelf and you'd see them and you'd be like, who did that? And it was always Paul's pieces that I was always attracted to. And I feel like towards the end, before he left, he and I kind of grew closer, and he started actually reaching out to me and asking me if I'd like to go have lunch with him. And we'd go and we would just sit together quietly and sometimes laugh, sometimes kind of talk about just the challenges of things. And I really felt grateful that he could open up with me about that stuff. So I kind of got just a lot of different tastes of what Paul was about. He did have, like you guys said, more of a sarcastic side to him, but I don't. So he didn't really show that to me. So I didn't really have that. I'm kind of sensitive that way. So he was very good at treating me with that sensitivity that I had. He was really good at adapting. And I remember my last time with Paul before he became in his bed. He took me in the garage and he showed me how to do his wire sculptures. And like he started loading me up with all this stuff. He's like, I want you to take these thingies, these pliers. I want you to take these spools of blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, I just want to just do this with you. I don't need to go into that as a business or anything. But he was like, please take it. So I always have that memory and his pieces around my yard. He made me a heart and a cat. And, gosh, a flower, an angel. He made me an angel. And I got to be with him during his dying process. And it was really tender. There was a lot of tenderness I felt with him and towards him, and he was really open to all that. And I was really grateful to be able to have that with him. And I grew closer with Mark through the process, learning about them and hearing the stories. And it was really fun one time too. We were talking about music, and Mark was talking about how Paul really liked 70s music, funk. So he put it on the radio. Remember, you put it on the radio in the room, and it's like you could tell that Paul felt it and that he loved that. And I think he was kind of shuffling his feet around a lot. So I think he was kind of trying to dance a little bit and definitely feeling it. I read a book to him, this book, E.T., because we like the UFO stuff, and when I was reading some of the stuff in the book, like this part, where E.T. says he'll be right here, Paul reached up and he touched my forehead with his finger. He was so present. So present. So, anyway, I'll miss him.
I look even paler compared to all of you Californians when I'm in the sun, so I didn't prepare anything, but Paul is my uncle. He's my uncle. This is actually a funny story, so I'm really setting it up here. Well, I'm gay, but I didn't even have an idea of what that was for a while. And actually way too late, probably, because my whole life, pretty much, you guys have been together. But I didn't figure out they were married until like 7th grade when you came to my bat mitzvah. I didn't even know my Uncle Mark or Paul were gay. I didn't really put 2 and 2 together. I'll never forget one day. I was 13, and it was me and my mom and dad and my twin sister Nina, who couldn't be here today. And they were talking about like Uncle Mark and Paul and how like we were so excited that they were coming to my bat mitzvah or whatever. And then my mom said something about them being married, and I was like, is Uncle Mark gay? And I was like, my whole life, I thought Paul was just coming to hang out with us. Like he's this good, great guy who was just a cool friend of my Uncle Mark's. And it was just, I don't know. And then once he was family, I don't know about you guys, I'm friends with my family. I argued with Mark about that yesterday, that I want to be friends with all my family members. And I am. And Paul, even though we're not the same age, was a good friend, not just an uncle. And I saw him in March. And we were just like, we had a great morning. I drove up here. I was here for work, and we went to breakfast together, and we were goofing around, and he showed me his sculpture, and he always, no matter what, I have this giant bucket. I don't know if you guys have the bucket in your house of all of the jewelry that he gives, but it comes by the bag. And he was just such a giving guy. And I was just sitting here looking at the mosaics, thinking how funny it was that those are just a bunch of little pieces put together, kind of like all of us, like I don't know any of you guys, but he brought us all together here, and it's so nice, and I'm gonna miss him a lot. He's just a good guy, and he was nuts. Like one time he came to my graduation in Nashville, and he saw a fireball in my freezer that someone left there, And then every time I saw him after that, he would have fireball shots waiting for me, and I didn't have the heart to tell him that I hate fireball. So we've taken so many fireball shots together. I came here in 2019 with my sister, and they love Costco, so he poured a whole Costco size of shooters out on the table. And not everybody's, I don't know how old he was, but like 60-year-old uncle asked to go get their ears pierced with you. He's a really cool guy, and I'm glad he brought us together, and I'm glad he was a part of our life. So if anyone else who isn't crying wants to talk, or maybe start crying, I don't know. It's up to you.
I wanted just to say, I come from a place probably a little different than everyone here. I didn't know Paul very well. I come here more of an admirer of his work. I guess his spiritual presence impacted me quite a bit. I met him at a few gatherings, and I took wind of his dry humor right away, sarcasm. I really liked that a lot. I resonated with that. So I automatically realized he was a really nice person, and I could sense his goodness. But then I went to an art show I was invited to by Karen and Rhonda, and I saw his pieces. And immediately I was drawn to them, and I'm like, I'll have one of those, one of those, one of those. I really wanted to clear the whole thing out. I was trying to decorate my new home, and I needed some pieces, but I also have a spiritual kind of part of me that I just wanted to be part of my home, and it just was there. I mean, it was just. I just wanted everything. So I took 4 pieces home. 3 of them I called my 3 saints. And I have a duck as well, somebody mentioned. So just to throw that in there somewhere. But I wanted to be here, just share, just to listen about Paul a little bit more. And everything that I'm hearing is just so much what I imagined. And so I appreciate him from many levels, just listening. And again, Mark, I'm sorry for, condolences, and I wish you joy and happiness in your future. Thank you.
Hi. I know Paul through working with Clay, and thereby met Mark. And Paul was a rascal. Not dry humor, but he had a wonderful sense of humor. And he was so generous. And I didn't realize the scope of his work until I was invited to come here one weekend, and he had all his work on display and for sale. And the whole side of the house mosaicked from shards that he found at Clay Associates, and maybe added to some of his own. He was just delightful, and I came to visit him and Mark at Christmas time, and they had a splendid tree with all these ornaments that commemorated their visits and trips, and just it was a dazzle. It was amazing. And so as I walked around, I saw all these light catchers, these crystals, and Paul says to me, well, here, take a few. And he designed and created these beautiful hanging crystal pieces. So I have one on my mirror. Every morning I think of him. He will so be missed. He was a joy.
Well, I've known Paul since he and Mark got together. And the first thing I was so happy about with Paul is that he made Mark happy. That was the very first thing. But I just couldn't get over his creativity. I mean, I've never known anyone that was creative in so many ways. So when my partner and I bought a house and redid our yard, took all the grass out and put plants, I told them I want a mosaic in the center of our walkway back there. And I've done a few minor mosaics, but it was just so overwhelming for me to think about doing a mosaic that was a 36-inch circle to be able to do that. And so I struggled and struggled and struggled. And finally I told my partner, Rebecca, I said, let's ask Paul if he would be willing to come and help you do it. So Paul came over. He brought some of his own pieces, some mirror pieces and some other things. And he and Rebecca sat out there in the yard and created this most beautiful mosaic in our yard. And the light shines on it. And it's just, we get comments every time somebody visits our yard that it's the most beautiful piece because that's the showpiece in our backyard. And I loved Paul. I loved him for, like I said, making Mark happy. I've known Mark for many, many years, and before he was ever at Kaiser, and long before that. And Paul was the first one I knew that Mark had made such a connection with. And I was so thankful for that. And I loved Paul dearly, and I will miss him.
I live in a great little neighborhood. My name's Kate again. Anyway, this is for me, but it also has to do with Kathy again. We live in a little neighborhood called Talmadge, and we have an incredible community. It has a real old feeling of community. And they have what are called food truck events, which of course closed down for a while, but then it opened up again. And I thought, well, let's have it be more fun. Let's invite some of our friends. So we invited Mark and Paul and some other people. And they came and we set up a table on our front lawn and there was music. And Paul took Kathy out and started dancing. Oh, my word. And twirling her around. And oh, my word, we had so much fun. So there were so many parts to this lovely man. Yeah, there were just so many parts.
My name is Michael Ann, and I've known Paul for as long as he's known Mark, because I've known Mark longer. What I want to say is that I didn't plan until it's off the cuff. Paul had a special. I know someone has said this before. That he had a special relationship with women, and that's true. He had not only a special relationship with all women. He had a special relationship with lesbians. He had has lesbian women who would like to marry him. Except that we're married already. And I mean, that if you're a lesbian person and you lived through the times when we were separatists and didn't want to hang out with men at all, here comes this guy. And he won't leave us alone. And he's very persistent in his friendship, and he just, I don't know if I'm his 23rd wife or his 45th wife. or maybe even more, but one of them. I'm definitely one of his wives. I adored him. And that's all I want to say for now.
So I'm not going to add anything original here. It's all been said. But I first met Paul, actually heard about Paul through Mark when they had just met. And he was in the office saying, I met somebody. He was kind of coy about it and dropped a few little words. And then over time, we heard more and more about Paul. And then there was Paul and I are together and we're getting married. And I think what I can say is we were all so happy because the change was wonderful for Mark. The happiness and getting to know Paul has been a true gift in my life. I think, just as everybody said, here's a guy who's sweet and perceptive and thoughtful and also can be really snarky in the best kind of way. And it would be wonderful to have those conversations. And, watching what's gone down, I keep thinking about a time when we were in the office having a shower for someone, and words of wisdom, which were our custom, were going around about, for those that have been long married, what do you do and what are the secrets? And Mark said something I think that really resonated with a lot of people about you and Paul, that there's something about that relationship, that you put up with things, you go through things, you'd find ways around things that you would never, ever think about going through with someone else, but it was worth it because that's who you were with and that was the person you were committed to. And it was really inspirational and I think really wise words for a lot of the people listening. I was even struck right at the end here because we all know that Paul did not like Mark's Tesla. Okay? I know he was subtle about it, but he didn't like Mark's Tesla. And Mark had a lot to say about his Tesla. So did Paul. None of it even remotely good. But I was struck by the fact that he first loved Mark enough to go along with the Tesla and was absolutely shocked when Mark had to go in the hospital and I found out that Paul drove the Tesla. I truly could not believe it. I said, I don't know what to say about this because I never would have imagined in a million years. But it sort of speaks volumes about the relationship. So I'm going to miss Paul terribly. I think as many have already said, he was a wonderful friend and a real gift in my life. So I can only hope that we can carry that memory forward. I certainly will.
I've known Paul for many, many years, but I didn't really get to know him until the past few years. I used to be an associate at Clay Associates, and he would always say, I thought you hated me because you wouldn't talk to me. And I said, no, it's because there's 150 students and there's like 9 of us, and I'm really bad with names. And so we cleared that up, and from there on, we just became like instant friends because he is just everything that everybody said here. He was just the sweetest person, and one time I was in class I'm back being a student now, so that's how I got close to him. And I was in class and he said, I'm making a bust and it's of you. And I want the hair to be red, so I have red hair. And he said, what glaze do you think I should use? And so I went up and I pointed to I can't remember what it was, Hatakaki. And so he made a bust about this big. And when I came over to visit him when he was dying, he said, you have to have this. And so I now have this gorgeous, gorgeous bust that he made. And he said, that's of you. And I don't think that I can add anything to what everyone has said already. I just felt really such a special connection with him. And I want to get to know Mark more because I just got to know Mark through Paul. And he really will be very deeply missed at the studio because there was an energy that he brought to the studio. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Jackie.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Mark. Gosh, it's been a couple weeks. I've been thinking about you a lot. This is really hard when you lose somebody that you care about a lot. I know Paul through Mark, and I care about Mark a lot. I didn't know Paul as well. I knew him from, the annual art shows that they'd have. And how I mostly know Paul is through Mark's eyes, because one of the things, Mark's office was right next to mine. And we would complain a lot about our spouses. Now I have to be careful about how much more I say about that, because my spouse is right here. But I got to know how wonderful Paul was through Mark, and how much he loved Paul. And Mark, I'm so sorry for your loss. But me, along with everybody else in here, is going to be here for you. And we love you. And we want you to hang in there, and you let us know if you need anything. But thanks for having Tina and I here today. And we're going to miss Paul too. You know, I was saying to Maureen, gosh, you can't get through the door without seeing Paul's influence. I mean, right away, right at the border, that mosaic, that's all Paul. And Paul has his stamp on so much of this. And how nice for you to have that, to have those reminders. So we're with you and we love you.
Well, I'd like to ask, my name is Emmy, and I have known Mark for many years. We both worked at Kaiser together, and I met Paul through Mark and didn't know Paul that well, which is why I had opted not to speak now. But I would like to hear more from you, Mark, because you said some things to me about what you were wanting to say to everybody today that I'm not sure I've heard yet.
I have to refresh my memory.
Well, I can't give you the details, but it was the things that you loved about him, the ways that you interacted, the beauty that he brought into your life. Does that ring a bell? It does. Well, so you called on others. I would like to call on you.
So we met on a blind date, and he had a good friend, a female friend, and I had a good friend, a female friend, and they were friends with each other, and they said to each other, we know these guys, and we think maybe they might get along. And so we arranged to have this blind date. And he, so as the date approached, he was expecting me to call and confirm it, which I did not do. And I just was going to go to the date that we had planned for. And so I did. I called him like an hour before. I said, I'll see you in an hour. And he was somewhere else. And he rushed home and arrived at this date all sweaty. And he said, I just thought you were a flake. So we met at Pizza Nova when that was in Hillcrest. And we had a really nice time. But the week after, I had a trip planned to Northern California to Santa Rosa, because I had decided I really didn't like San Diego at all. And I was working at Kaiser, and I was thinking, I'm going to try and get a transfer to Santa Rosa. So I went up there. I bought a Thomas map, if anybody remembers Thomas maps. I really loved Northern California. Went to Kaiser, checked it out. I thought it'd be really great. And then I came back, and we started dating, and Santa Rosa went out the window. And this guy was so much fun. We had so much fun. I've got some X-rated pictures that no one's going to see, but I would come home from work for Valentine's Day, and he would be laying in bed with a Valentine out, and that was all. Or for the 4th of July, he would have a flag in his hand and a headband, and that was all. For Easter, he had ears on, and that was all. So he really enjoyed making me laugh, and we had lots and lots of laughs. And when I was working at Kaiser, I would work late on Thursday nights. And I would come home on Thursday night, and he was sitting in the den watching TV, and I would sit on his lap and start devouring his neck. And we called it Neck Thursday. And he was so hysterical about that. He just laughed his ass off. And it was so much fun. And it's such a wonderful memory. In fact, so because neither of us had good memories anymore, there's a Alexa in the den, and she still tells me on Thursday nights, it's time for Neck Thursday. And that is such a good memory. It is so wonderful to hear her say that. And it just connects me with how sad I am that he's gone and how grateful. So I'm really sad and really grateful. And is that what you wanted?
Yeah. Well, Mark and I have been friends for many years at Kaiser. And I unfortunately had the terror of my wife developing cancer about 9.5 years ago. And I was going through that ordeal with her. And then Paul developed cancer. And Mark and I had this weird club that we were both in, which is the spouse of a terminally ill person. And he was supportive of me prior to that, and I guess I was a little bit supportive of him. And my wife, we were together 45 years, so I was luckier in that regard. And she actually lasted 8.5 years with lung cancer, which was a miracle of endurance anyway. Not easy for her. But it's been really, it's been valuable to have somebody else who understands, this weird perspective on life. And I hope I can be helpful to you in the future. I value your friendship. Thank you.
I mean, I've been wanting to see you for a long time since I retired. And I guess we had to do this. And I'm so happy to see people here that I haven't seen in a while. And it's a sad, happy time. And we love you, Mark. And we're here for you. Thanks.
Yes, please. So I've already told you that Mark is my main connection here. And I've been here to events where Paul's work was here, and when he came up to Cardiff, where I live, and had some of his items at Nancy's sales, I got to know him a little bit. But I think we're kind of close to the end of people sharing, and I want to talk a little bit about Mark's present and future. Because, okay, so I knew Mark at Kaiser, and I was there way before he was. So I've known him many years. And then I lived in Cardiff, And Nancy, who lives in Cardiff, began having Mark over. So I kind of reconnected with Mark at Nancy's house. And what I want to tell you that is happening now is that Mark is coming to the yoga class that I teach at the Cardiff Library. He and Nancy and Barb come together, and it's just been so wonderful to have him join this community of people, because I've been teaching chair yoga for the last 15 years, I would say. For chair yoga, you know, the suggestion is there, chair yoga. And yeah, it's most of us are older people, and that's terrific, but we have younger people who come sometimes too. So anyway, I just wanted to say that, and I love having you in class. We all do, Mark. And I think it's great for Mark, doing a new thing for himself.
Thank you. I worked with Mark. I was one of his colleagues at Kaiser, and I met Paul through Mark. And I came over here for the art sales, and we had them over to our house for dinner. Paul walked in, and I had this large platter on my wall. And he said, "Oh, you got a gong over there." And I thought, oh, this guy's got a sense of humor. And we just had a really nice time with him. And he also made me one of his art pieces. And he asked what I wanted, and I said, I'll let you choose. And he made this beautiful, tall statue with the curly locks on it. It was really beautiful, and I just know that they shared such a special relationship, and my heart pains that I know that Mark has lost his partner, and I just want you to know that I'll be here for you, and I hope we get together soon. Yeah, thank you for introducing me to Paul.
Thanks very much. Okay, I have some regrets. I know Paul looked at my yard and said, "Oh, we got work to do here." And really, we're on the verge of doing the work. And now, we're going to have to connect with Paul in other ways and find how to do the yard work. He was always there to move a fish over to Anne's yard or to move things around, and very helpful, and he'll be missed. I had wished for more time for him. My brother survived many more years with the same similar cancer, so I was hopeful that it would be way more than 5 years. So, but it doesn't work that way. So, Mark, I hope you'll call, and I can be supportive to you in any way of this time. Love you. Love Paul. Thank you.
I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led